Red light swept across my cockpit window before I had even finished docking. 3 alien patrol ships closed in around my small cargo hauler, engines glowing, weapons ports open but not firing. My hands froze on the controls. 6 years of running trade routes through the Concorde reaches, and nothing like this had ever happened to me before. A voice crackled through my comm. "Hold position. Do not attempt departure." I raised my hands slowly, even though nobody could see me through the hull, because somehow it felt like the right thing to do when 3 armed ships had you boxed in. The docking clamp locked onto my hull with a heavy clunk that echoed through the cabin. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it over the hum of the engines. I had not smuggled anything. I had not broken a single Concorde law in 6 years of flying, so why did it feel like my life was about to change forever? The airlock hissed open, and a VEC officer stepped through, his pale insect-like body moving with quick, precise steps. His name tag read Thes Kurl. He held a scanner in one clawed hand, and his compound eyes fixed on me the moment he crossed the threshold. I held out my identification card, my fingers trembling slightly. He took it without a word and pressed it against his scanner. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then his mandibles clicked together twice, sharp and fast, a sound I had heard other VEC make only in moments of deep shock. He looked up from the scanner, and his voice dropped so low that even the 2 guards behind him could not hear it. "We have been waiting for you." I laughed, a nervous, broken sound. "That has to be a mistake. I have never even set foot on your home world. I do not know what you think I have done, but I promise you, I am just a cargo pilot." He did not lower the scanner. His eyes stayed locked on mine, unblinking, like he was afraid I might vanish if he looked away. "Please," he said, "come with me, quietly. No harm will come to you. But you must come now." Behind him, the 2 guards shifted their weapons slightly, not aiming them at me, but making it clear that quietly was not really a choice I had. I stepped out of my pilot seat, my legs unsteady beneath me, and followed him through the airlock into the belly of the station. The corridors of Threshold Station stretched out in every direction, filled with a dozen different alien species going about their business, none of them sparing me a second glance. That should have comforted me. Instead, it made the whole thing feel even stranger. Whatever was happening to me was happening quietly, deliberately, hidden in plain sight. Thes Kurl led me into a small room just off the main concourse. No cameras blinking in the corners, no interrogation table bolted to the floor, nothing that matched what I had imagined a detention cell would look like. Just 2 simple chairs and a data terminal glowing softly in the dim light. "Sit, please," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs like I was a guest rather than a prisoner. I sat, my whole body rigid, waiting for something terrible to happen. Instead, he sat across from me and folded his clawed hands together on the table. "I need to show you something," he said, "and I need you to stay calm while I do." His claws moved across the terminal, and a file opened, old and worn, the timestamp reading back more than 40 years. My stomach tightened as I read the header. Emergency Distress Log, VEC Colony Vessel, Halvin's Reach. 41 years ago, he said, his voice steady now. This ship suffered a catastrophic reactor failure in the Karth Drift, a region with no relay coverage and no nearby rescue fleets. 11,000 VEC were aboard. Our engineers calculated 8 hours of breathable air remaining, and no help closer than 11 hours away. I stared at the screen, my throat tightening. That means they should have died. They should have, he agreed. Every calculation said so. But 6 hours into that emergency, an unregistered ship entered the drift. Its transponder gave no fleet code, no diplomatic clearance, nothing that matched any vessel in our records. It repaired the reactor breach using methods our engineers had never seen. It moved air scrubbers between decks by hand when the automated systems failed. And when the rescue fleet finally arrived 4 hours later, the pilot had already saved every single person aboard. My hands had gone cold. Who was the pilot? He turned the screen toward me, and I saw the name typed in careful Concorde script. Captain Joseph Carter. The room seemed to tilt around me. That is my grandfather's name. Thes Kurl nodded slowly, like he had expected this reaction, like he had rehearsed it in his mind 100 times over 41 years. We have logged the name of every human who has crossed into Concorde space since that day, quietly, patiently, hoping that one of them would share his blood. Today, our scanners matched your genetic marker to his family line. That is why I said what I said. We have been waiting a very long time. I sat there, stunned, memories flooding back of my grandfather telling stories at family dinners, laughing about the time he fixed some bug's spaceship. A story I had always assumed was some wild exaggeration from his years working cargo routes before he settled down. I never imagined it was real. I never imagined it was this real. Before I could ask another question, the door burst open and a young VEC technician rushed inside, her voice sharp with panic. Officer Tess Curl, forgive the interruption, but there is an emergency. A transport vessel just lost power near the outer relay, drifting toward the debris field. 300 passengers aboard. No rescue ship can reach them in time. Tess Curl stood immediately, his calm expression cracking for the first time. How long until it reaches the debris field? 18 minutes, the technician said, her voice trembling. Maybe less. My mind raced, pulling up star charts from memory, calculating distances out of pure instinct built from years of flying cargo through dangerous routes. Wait, I said, standing up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. What is the transport's current position? The technician blinked at me, confused by the sudden question from a stranger, but Tess Curl answered instead, reading coordinates off his scanner. My stomach dropped as I did the math in my head. That is close to my ship's last flight path. I know that region. I have flown through it a dozen times hauling cargo for stations that could not afford proper escorts. Every official rescue ship is too far, the technician said, her voice cracking with desperation. The nearest patrol vessel is 22 minutes out. They will hit the debris field before help arrives. I looked at Tess Curl, and something inside me settled into place, quiet and certain, the same way I imagined my grandfather must have felt 41 years ago staring down an impossible distance and deciding to close it anyway. My ship is faster than anything you have in this sector. I know that route better than your patrol pilots do. Let me go. Tess Curl stared at me for a long moment, his compound eyes searching my face like he was trying to decide if I understood what I was offering. This is not something you are required to do, he said carefully. You are not obligated by your grandfather's actions. I know that, I said, and my voice did not shake even though my hands still trembled. But I am offering anyway. Now open that airlock before we run out of time talking about it. He did not argue further. He turned and barked orders in rapid VEC to the technician, who nodded and sprinted from the room. Within minutes, I was back in my cockpit, engines roaring to life, the docking clamp releasing with a metallic groan, as Tess Curl's voice came through my comm, clearer and steadier than before. Coordinates transmitted. Transport vessel designation Silver Wing. 312 passengers aboard, mostly VEC families relocating to the outer colonies. Power failure in their main drive core. They are drifting, unable to steer, unable to slow their approach to the debris field. I pushed my throttle forward, and my little hauler shot out of the docking bay, leaving Threshold Station behind in a blur of stars. My hands moved across the controls with practiced ease, but my mind kept circling back to the same thought, over and over. My grandfather had done exactly this, in exactly this kind of moment, and he had never once mentioned it, not even once, not even at the family table where he told every other story twice. 14 minutes, Tess Curl's voice said through the comm, tight with tension. The debris field grows denser near its center. If they drift much further, even a rescue will not save them. I gritted my teeth and pushed my engines past their rated limits, warning lights flashing across my dashboard, alarms chirping insistently. I ignored every single one of them. Come on, I whispered to my ship, to myself, to whoever might be listening. Just a little faster. The stars outside my window blurred into streaks of light. And slowly, a shape emerged ahead of me, a large transport vessel tumbling slowly through space, its lights flickering weak and uneven, drifting closer to a field of jagged metal debris that used to be an old mining station destroyed decades ago. This is Ellie Carter, hailing Silverwing, I said into my comm, my voice steadier than I felt. I am here to help. Can anyone respond? Static crackled for a long moment, before a strained voice answered, edged with fear. This is Silverwing. Our main drive is dead. Emergency thrusters barely holding our course steady. We have children aboard. Please tell me you can do something. I studied my scanners, my mind working faster than it ever had before, pulling together everything I knew about drive systems, about emergency repairs, about the kind of improvised fixes cargo pilots learned out of necessity, when official help was always too far away. Listen carefully, I said. I am going to match your drift speed and dock manually. It will be rough. Brace your passengers. Understood, the voice said, relief and fear tangled together in those two words. I eased my ship alongside the tumbling transport, matching its slow, sickening spin as best I could, my hands steady despite the sweat running down my back. The docking port lined up, barely, and I slammed the clamps into place with a jolt that rattled my teeth. I grabbed my emergency kit and rushed through the airlock into the transport, greeted immediately by a wall of frightened faces, families huddled together in the dim emergency lighting, children crying softly against their parents. An older VEC man limped toward me, his uniform marking him as the ship's engineer. "The core stabilizer failed," he said, his voice hoarse. "We patched what we could, but the backup regulators cannot hold much longer. We do not have the parts to fix it properly." "Show me," I said, following him deeper into the ship, past rows of terrified passengers who watched me with wide, hopeful eyes, like I was something more than just a tired cargo pilot who had walked into the wrong conversation at exactly the right moment. The engine room was worse than I expected, sparks hissing from a cracked regulator panel, warning symbols flashing red across every display. I dropped to my knees beside the damaged unit, my hands already moving on instinct, remembering every late night I had spent fixing my own ship's engines because I could not afford proper mechanics on my trade routes. "I need a plasma coupler and something to insulate this wiring," I said, and the engineer scrambled to find the parts while I worked, my fingers steady despite the ship groaning around me as it drifted ever closer to the debris field. 6 minutes. Theskurl's voice crackled through my comm. "Urgent now. You need to hurry." "I do not have 6 minutes," I muttered, splicing wires with careful precision. My grandfather's old lessons somehow surfacing in my memory, even though he had died when I was barely 9 years old. He used to sit with me in our garage showing me how machines worked, telling me that space was smaller than people thought if you were willing to go the long way around for someone. I never understood what he meant until this exact moment. The regulator sparked once, twice, and then steadied, humming back to life beneath my hands. I sealed the panel and scrambled to the main control console, my heart hammering as I input emergency startup commands, praying the fix would hold. "Come on," I whispered again, watching the display cycle through system checks, agonizingly slow. Then, with a shudder that ran through the entire ship, the main drive flared back to life, and the transport lurched forward under its own power for the first time in what must have felt like an eternity to the passengers. Cheers erupted through the corridors behind me, families embracing each other, children clapping with relief they were too young to fully understand but old enough to feel. "I am reading full power restoration on Silverwing," Theskurl said, his voice cracking with something close to disbelief. "You did it. You actually did it." I sank back against the console, my whole body shaking now that the danger had passed, tears stinging my eyes, though I could not have said whether they were from fear or relief or something else entirely. "I guess it runs in the family," I said quietly, mostly to myself. The transport steered smoothly away from the debris field, and within minutes, the promised patrol ships arrived, though by then, their help was no longer needed. I stood in the corridor of Silverwing, surrounded by grateful passengers who touched my shoulders gently, whispered words of thanks in languages I barely understood, and looked at me like I had done something extraordinary rather than something desperate and improvised. An elderly Vec woman approached me slowly, leaning on a cane, her eyes glistening. "I was aboard the Halvan's Reach 41 years ago," she said, her voice trembling with age and emotion. "I was a young mother then, terrified my child would not survive the night. A human pilot saved us. I never learned his full name until today, when someone told me who had just saved this ship as well. My throat tightened, and I could not find words for a long moment. That was my grandfather, I finally managed to say. He never told anyone what he did. He never even told his own family." She reached out and took my hand in both of hers, her grip surprisingly strong. "Then you have already given us more than you know, simply by carrying his kindness inside you. Some families pass down wealth. Yours passed down something far greater." When I finally returned to Threshold Station, Theskurl was waiting at the docking bay. His posture relaxed in a way I had not seen from him before. "Word travels quickly here," he said. "By tonight, every Vec in this sector will know what you did. Your grandfather's name will not be forgotten, and neither will yours." "I do not need recognition," I said honestly. "I just could not stand by and do nothing." "That," he said, "is precisely why we have been waiting for you. Not because we expected greatness, because we hoped, quietly, for 41 years, that kindness like his had not vanished from your world." I stood there on the docking bay, looking out at the stars stretching endlessly beyond the station, thinking about a grandfather I barely remembered, a man who had quietly changed the lives of 11,000 strangers and never once asked for anything in return. I thought about the families aboard Silverwing, about the old woman's trembling hands, about how close everything had come to going terribly wrong. I do not know what path led me to that exact checkpoint on that exact day, whether it was pure coincidence or something closer to fate, but I know this much for certain. Somewhere out there, more people are drifting through their own version of the Karth drift, waiting for someone to close the distance and reach them. And now I understood. In a way I never had before, exactly why my grandfather always said that space was smaller than people thought, if you were simply willing to go the long way around for someone who needed you. I walked back to my ship that night with a new weight settled quietly on my shoulders. Not a burden, but a promise. Whatever came next, wherever my routes carried me across the endless dark between the stars, I would carry his lesson with me, ready for the next time someone needed a stranger to arrive exactly when all hope seemed lost.